While the woman was hosting her father's funeral, she accidentally discovered that in his hand, he was tightly holding on to $200. She knew it was because her father was still thinking about her younger brother, who had been away from home for 10 years. To fulfill her father's last wish, the woman immediately called her younger brother, asking him to come back to see their father one last time. But once the call went through, the brother refused to come home no matter what. He even said he wanted to sever all ties with the family. The reason the man was so heartless goes back to 10 years ago. At that time, he had just graduated from college. In order to find a job, he called his father and asked for $200 to buy new clothes. Unexpectedly, his father immediately refused him. He bluntly said that all the family's money had been spent on medicine for his mother. The man instantly felt wronged after hearing that. He said that during his years in college, he hadn't asked the family for anything except tuition. Even his clothes were ones he had picked out of trash bins. Now he just wanted to buy a cheap suit to job hunt, and his father still wouldn't agree. But the father had his own difficulties. He truly didn't have $200 to give, so he told the man to figure something out on his own. The man became furious upon hearing that. He yelled that his father didn't deserve to be a dad. If he couldn't afford to raise a child, why did he even bring him into the world, only to be looked down upon by others? Saying that, he wanted to cut ties with his father. Seeing his son being so unfilial made the father furious. Ignoring his wife's attempt to stop him, he swore never to let his son step foot in their home again. But the mother was worried about the man, so she called him, but no one answered. That frightened the mother terribly. At that time, the daughter had also come home. When she learned her father had cut ties with her brother over $200, she quickly tried calling her brother. But again, no one answered. The mother, now fearing something had happened to her son, hurried to his school with her daughter to find out more. The teacher told them the truth. He said the man had already left school long ago. They had reported it to the police and were looking everywhere for him. After learning from the teacher that her son was missing, the mother was heartbroken. She and her daughter posted missing person notices everywhere. Back home, she blamed her husband even more. She had lost her son over $200. Every day, the mother cried herself to sleep. Only then did the father begin to regret. He regretted not agreeing to his son's request. So he grabbed the borrowed $200 and was about to go find his son. Fortunately, his daughter stopped him. The father shouted, full of guilt, asking his son to come back quickly, but sadly, it was already too late. Soon, 10 years had passed. They still had no news of the man, and due to extreme guilt, the father had become seriously ill and was nearing death. His last wish was to see his son one last time, but everyone had been searching for him for 10 years with no success. Little did they know, the man still held a grudge against his father. Not only had he not come home for 10 years, he had even secretly gotten married and had children, but life was hard for him. His whole family lived off his meager salary. Even paying for a tutoring class for his son required careful budgeting. He even claimed he would never be an irresponsible father like his own. He swore his son would never start life at a disadvantage. He even, right in front of his wife and child, emotionally criticized his own father, but his wife didn't see it that way. She said there's no such thing as parents who don't love their children. They must have been going through something hard at the time, but the man disagreed. He continued to blame his father self-righteously. After all, he'd been gone 10 years and they hadn't come looking for him. But what he didn't know was, his parents had never stopped searching for him. Even the father he hated was on the verge of death. In an effort to ease tensions between him and his family, his wife waited until their child was asleep and asked him for $200, saying it was for the child's lunch fees. But after all his expenses, the man only had $100 left. He absolutely refused to give it up. He said their child could just eat at home every day. Unexpectedly, his wife told him he was just like his father, unable to even come up with $200. The man defended himself, saying he had done his best. But his wife replied, how could he be sure his father hadn't done his best back then? Seeing he had nothing to say, his wife continued, saying how hard it is to be a parent. Besides, his father had to raise 2 kids. He must have given them all his love. Hearing this, memories suddenly suddenly came flooding back to the man of his childhood with his father. Even at meals, his father would leave the only chicken drumstick for him, saying they didn't like chicken. Only then did the man realize his father truly did love him. Seeing her husband finally moved, his wife suggested they return home the next day. So under his wife's persuasion, the man finally agreed. The whole family took the earliest bus to go see his parents. But what they didn't know was, the father was already at the end of his life, and in the very last moments of his life, he was still calling out his son's name, blaming himself for not giving his son those $200 back then. And the son he had always missed had already arrived at the entrance of the village with his wife and child. They thought they would finally reunite. But in the end, the father didn't get to see his son. He passed away before that could happen. When the man arrived at his old home, he opened the door and found that the people inside weren't his parents. He was extremely confused, so he asked his uncle why he was at his house and where his parents and sister had gone. When he heard from his uncle's wife that their house had been demolished and they'd received a large sum of compensation, and that his parents and sister had bought a house in the city with that money, no longer living in the countryside, the man's misunderstanding of his parents only deepened. No wonder they hadn't looked for him in 10 years. They had gone to enjoy their life in the city. Thinking this, he angrily left with his wife. Little did he know, the father he had always resented had just passed away moments earlier. But after returning home, the more the man thought, the angrier he became. He believed he was also entitled to part of the compensation, so he planned to go to the city to ask his parents for the money. But as soon as he opened the door, he was shocked by the scene in front of him.